Hi there, Travis Meyer here for Quarry Hill. Thanks for joining us for part 2, taking a look at some of the hidden history parts of the park. Today we're standing in front of the Quarry Hill Cave. If you missed that history tour, you can find it online. Today's focus, however, are going to be 3 other sites that you may be less familiar with. 1, the fireplace, 2, the reservoir, and 3, the quarry. We hope you enjoy. Here we are at the fireplace, built by the Rochester State Hospital around 1935. Prior to this being a wonderful place to come and have a picnic, have a nice warm fire, have a drink from the nearby pump, this was a dump. The hospital often brought things that they didn't need anymore and left them here, some of which can still be found in the hillside very nearby the creek. Let's go there now. So here we are down by Silver Creek. We've spent a few minutes looking around and we found a handful of objects for you to see. They are a variety of things made out of a variety of materials. We've got things like a brick, some sort of a metal pot with a nice handle, a piece of metal strapping, some decorative sort of stone, maybe a planter perhaps. It was quite common for them to try to decorate the hospital. And what we find very commonly are pieces of the dinnerware, things like plates and coffee mugs. We're headed next to a very important place for the Rochester State Hospital, and that is the reservoir. But it's also a place that's hard to really capture the true size. And so here we are in a more open spot to show you just how big the reservoir was. Here we are at 75 feet. And here we are at 225 feet. Well, we've made it to the reservoir, and I'm actually standing in it. The hospital down the hill, about 1,600 feet that way, depended on this place for all of its domestic drinking water, bathing, cooking, but in addition to that, it was very important for fire protection. This reservoir provided enough water and pressure to shoot a stream of water onto just about every part of the campus from a central tower. The reservoir started out about 75 feet long, and that was constructed in 1881. But within 2 years, it was determined that they wanted it much bigger, so they enlarged it to 225 feet. The entire structure is supposed to be 12 feet wide, 12 feet deep, 225 feet long, and have an arch 12 inches thick over the top of it. This is what's left. In 1967, there were actually efforts to fill in some of this reservoir to make it a safer place for people visiting the park. We're going to head to the far corner now, where we're going to try to find some of the remaining plaster that could be in this reservoir. Well, we're now in the corner that I expected to see some plaster, but it appears as though it too is gone. The plaster was part of the construction that they did to make this area watertight, and part of that meant lining it with plaster. But of course the years have taken their toll on the reservoir, just like some of the other sites that we are visiting. One of the most obvious parts missing is the arched roof. There was to be that 12-inch thick roof, which was of course to help keep things from contaminating the reservoir, keep all the branches and sticks and leaves and critters out. We're going to try our best to walk the length so that you can see what's left and how much this has overgrown. What I've never understood is how the first 75 feet could hold 125,000 gallons, but when they bumped it out to 225, they said it could only hold 225. How's that work? tree we have here is evidence of just how long it's been since this reservoir was being used. You can see it's quite substantial. Yeah, that's pretty much the midway point. If not, there might be more on this end. The reservoir's useful life ended about 50 years after being constructed. Well, we're here standing in the quarry, which was again another important place for the hospital. Early on, it was a source for building materials. It eventually became an important source not only for the hospital, but for the surrounding community for its crushed rock. And so you can see the results of about 65 years worth of operation, where anywhere from 25 to 50 individuals would be up here working very hard in the quarry, often very early in the morning until the late afternoon. They would be using dynamite to loosen the stone, and then often hand loading it into small railroad cars, and a horse or an ox then pulling it over to the rock crusher. So this little bit of history behind me is known as the cap shack. It's kind of hard to see, and it's kind of hard to get to sometimes, because of the water that we would have in the quarry and all of the brush that's along this part of the wall. It was very important here in the quarry to help keep the workers safe. You see, stored in this little room behind me was the caps.
The purpose of a cap is to produce a small explosion in order to explode the harder to ignite dynamite. This system made it safer to transport and use the dynamite.
We're going to head next to the dynamite shack. The structure we see here is known as the dynamite shack, and it was used in tandem with the cap shack as a means to keep all the workers here in the quarry safe. All the dynamite was stored in here, which would probably be about 4 or 5 tons worth, and the smaller charges of caps were kept in another cap shack along a farther wall, both of which were equipped with a blast wall in the front that would have risen much higher, and you can't see much of today.
An interesting incident drew the FBI to this site in the 1930s. Someone had broken into the dynamite house and stolen a box of dynamite. A special train bringing Franklin D. Roosevelt to town was due the next day. No incident occurred, although there were many uneasy moments and greatly increased security within the region. The missing dynamite was never found.
So to anyone in this area requiring stone for construction, gravel for roads, or cement, or lime dust for their fields, this was a very important place up until the 1950s. There are lots of these little hidden gems around Quarry Hill. We enjoy sharing them with you. We hope you enjoy learning about them and hopefully coming out to see them yourselves. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time.